Today I'm going to be discussing The Interpretation of Dreams, an 1899 book considered to be one of the best works of Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalytic psychology. Sigmund Freud was born in 1856 to a middle-class Jewish family in Austria. He went on to study neuroscience and practice medicine, famously promoting cocaine as a non-addictive treatment to many psychological ailments such as depression. The Interpretation of Dreams was published in 1899, but didn't become popular until its subsequent editions. In total, it's thought that Freud published 8 versions of the text. After its rise in popularity, Freud released an abridged version, which he simply called On Dreams. He's quoted saying of his work, "Insight such as this fails to one's lot but once in a lifetime." Fundamentally, Freudian theory states that we are all driven by the pleasure principle, or a desire to always take the path of least resistance which will gain the highest net yield of pleasurable experiences. As infants, the pleasure principle dictates nearly all of our actions, but as we grow, we're expected to adjust to the reality principle. This is the idea that we must circumvent the pursuit of short-term desires in order to achieve long-term goals. Any contributing member of society must work in alignment with the reality principle. Freud described the cause of anxiety, which was then known as neuroses, as developing a faulty negotiation with the reality principle in which the pleasure principle has been suppressed rather than dealt with. Further, Freud believed that there were 3 ruling parts to one's personality that constantly live in conflict with one another: the id, the superego, and the ego. The id is driven by pursuit of the pleasure principle, whereas the superego is driven by the desire to follow rules. The job of the ego is to accommodate both of them, a task which will, in theory, grant one inner peace. Freud is quoted as saying, "The interpretation of dreams is the royal road to a knowledge of the unconscious activities of the mind." He believed that all dreams were a product of wish fulfillment and that they had 2 primary origins. The first type of dream is a product of the unconscious mind constructing a wish, which is then expressed through a dream. The second type of dream is a process of censorship. Desires that we're too afraid to face during our waking hours are still revealed to us during our dreams. However, their image is forcibly distorted in order to protect the ego. Further still, the content of these dreams can be broken down into manifest content versus latent content. Manifest content is the remembered narrative that plays out in a dream, and latent content refers to the underlying meaning of that dream. Freud is quoted as believing that every dream has a connection point with an experience of the previous day, no matter how small. He explained how we can hear external stimuli in our dreams, like an alarm clock or music, by quoting, "The mind is withdrawn from the external world during sleep, and it is unable to give it a correct interpretation. Our mind wishes to keep sleeping, so it suppresses it by weaving it into a dream." In dream interpretation, displacement refers to a single object being described as something other than itself due to censorship to protect the ego. Representation refers to a single object describing the causal relationship between 2 things. Freud even believed in prophetic dreams and gave names to these as well. Freud commonly used symbolism in order to further explain his dream interpretations. A person was often referred to as a house, men having smooth walls and a simple design, and women having projections or balconies to cling to. Parents were often represented by kings, queens, or other authority figures, where children or siblings were often represented by small animals, especially vermin. Pregnancy and birth is often represented by water, and death is often represented by taking a journey. Nakedness is represented by clothing, especially uniforms, and a loved one is often represented by jewels or treasure. However, dreams of one's teeth falling out were thought to be anxiety dreams, a fear of castration as a punishment for masturbation. Freud was critical of those who said that his content was highly sexualized, quoting, "The assertion that all dreams require a sexual interpretation, against which critics rage so incessantly, occurs nowhere in my interpretation of dreams. It is not to be found in any of the numerous editions of this book, and it is an obvious contradiction to the other views expressed in it." However, many of his symbols were highly sexualized. Anytime the number 3 appeared, it referred to male genitalia. The penis could be represented by any long or upright objects such as sticks, umbrellas, poles, trees, or the Washington Monument. They could also be described by anything that could penetrate the body, such as knives, swords, or firearms, or things from which water flows, such as faucets or fountains. Even any elongatable or collapsible object, such as a telescope, was thought to represent a penis. Erections were represented by balloons, airplanes, missiles, rockets, or even flying. Female genitalia was described as being pit-like, cave-like, anything representing a bottle, a box, pockets, suitcases, churches, shoes, or the mouth. Women were also represented by wooden or paper objects, and breasts were represented by fruit, but especially apples and pears.